In less than 21 hours, negotiations between the United States and Iran moved from cautious progress to a complete collapse. What looked like a narrow opportunity to reduce tension and ease pressure on global markets suddenly disappeared. The real question is not just what happened during those hours, but what they revealed about the deeper issues behind the talks. In this video, we'll break down what led to the collapse, why the deal was fragile from the start, and what this means for global energy, regional stability, and future diplomacy. To understand the situation clearly, we need to begin with what these talks were actually about. This was not a full return to the 2015 nuclear agreement. Instead, both sides were exploring a limited short-term arrangement. The idea was to reduce immediate pressure without committing to a long-term framework. Under this proposal, Iran would scale back certain parts of its nuclear activity. This included lowering enrichment levels and allowing greater access for international monitoring. In return, the United States would allow some level of economic relief. This could involve access to frozen funds and limited flexibility in oil exports. On paper, this looks simple, but in practice, it is built on a fragile balance. The United States wants to slow down Iran's nuclear progress and reduce the risk of escalation. Iran wants economic relief after years of sanctions affecting trade, currency value, and government spending, so both sides have reasons to engage, but they also have strong reasons to be cautious. At the start of the latest round of talks, there were signals that some progress was possible. Officials working through intermediaries began outlining the structure of a temporary deal. Early discussions focused on technical details, how much enrichment would be reduced, how monitoring would be handled, and what level of financial access would be allowed. At this stage, expectations were controlled. No one was expecting a major breakthrough, but there was enough alignment to keep discussions moving. Then the first major issue emerged. It was not about whether a deal could exist. It was about how it would begin. This is where the negotiations started to slow down. The United States pushed for a clear sequence. Iran would first take measurable steps, reducing enrichment, allowing inspections, and showing compliance. Only after that would economic relief begin. Iran took a different position. From their perspective, past agreements showed that compliance does not always lead to lasting benefits. Sanctions can return quickly and economic relief can be limited or delayed. So Iran wanted immediate access to financial resources as a sign of commitment. This created a direct conflict. One side wanted compliance first, the other wanted relief first. At first, negotiators tried to bridge this gap. Ideas were discussed around phased implementation. Both sides could take steps at the same time, in stages, to build confidence gradually. But here's where it becomes difficult. A short-term deal leaves very little room for uncertainty. Every step needs to be clearly defined, verified, and trusted. If any part of the process is unclear, the entire agreement becomes unstable. And this is where the talks began to lose momentum. As the hours passed, positions became more fixed. Instead of moving closer, both sides focused on protecting their priorities. Verification requirements remained strict. Sanctions relief remained conditional, and neither side was willing to take the first step without guarantees. By the final hours, the structure of the deal was still unclear, and without a clear starting point, there was no agreement to finalize. So within 21 hours, the talks ended. But the speed of the collapse can be misleading, because the real issue was not created in those 21 hours, it was already there. At the center of this situation is a long-standing problem: trust. Both sides are negotiating with a history that shapes every decision. From the U.S. perspective, any agreement must be verifiable. Monitoring systems, inspections, and reporting mechanisms are essential. Without them, there is no confidence that commitments are being followed. From Iran's perspective, The concern is about consistency. Economic relief must be real, accessible, and sustainable. Without that, there is little incentive to make concessions. So both sides are trying to protect themselves from risk. And that creates a situation where compromise becomes difficult. This is known as a sequencing problem. Who moves first, and how do you ensure the other side follows? In long-term agreements, there is more space to build trust over time, but in a short-term deal, everything happens quickly. And when trust is low, speed becomes a problem. Now, this is where another layer comes in. The talks are not happening in isolation. They are influenced by broader regional dynamics. Iran's role in the Middle East extends beyond its borders. At the same time, the United States maintains a strong military and naval presence across the region. Recent tensions in key areas have added pressure to the situation. From Washington's perspective, there is concern about whether a limited nuclear deal would actually reduce wider instability. From Iran's perspective, these regional issues should not be directly tied to nuclear negotiations. This difference in approach adds complexity, because even if a deal is reached on paper, the broader environment still matters. There is also domestic pressure. Leaders on both sides operate within political systems where compromise can be criticized. Any agreement must be acceptable, not just internationally, but also at home. This limits flexibility, and when flexibility is limited, negotiations become more rigid. Now let's shift to what this means beyond the talks themselves. One of the most immediate areas of impact is energy. Iran holds large oil reserves. If sanctions were eased, even partially, it could increase global oil supply. That has direct implications for pricing. Markets often react not just to actual supply, but to expected supply. So even the possibility of a deal can influence prices. With the collapse of talks, that expected supply does not enter the market. This can support higher prices, depending on other global conditions. Shipping is another key factor. The region is located near one of the most important maritime routes in the world, the Strait of Hormuz. A significant portion of global oil shipments passes through this area. When diplomatic efforts fail, risk perception increases. This affects insurance costs for vessels. It can also influence how companies plan their routes and manage their operations. So the effects are not limited to governments. They extend to global trade systems. Now, from a military and strategic perspective, the outcome is not immediate escalation. Instead, it is increased caution. Both sides are likely to maintain their current positions, with possible adjustments based on perceived risk. The United States continues to monitor the region through its presence. Iran maintains its own strategic positioning. Without a deal, there is less predictability. And when predictability decreases, even small incidents can have larger effects. This does not mean a major conflict is expected, but it does mean the system becomes more sensitive. Now, bringing all of this together, we can answer the key question. Why did the deal collapse in just 21 hours? Because the disagreement was already built into the structure of the negotiations. The 21-hour window did not create the problem, it exposed it. The main issues were clear: a lack of trust, a disagreement on who should act first, different priorities, security on one side, economic relief on the other, and external pressures from regional and domestic factors. When these elements combine, even a limited agreement becomes difficult to finalize. Looking ahead, the situation remains open. Talks may continue in indirect ways, even if not publicly. There are several things to watch: changes in nuclear activity, shifts in oil exports, developments in regional security. Each of these signals can indicate whether the situation is stabilizing or becoming more uncertain. For now, the outcome is not resolution, it is delay. And in geopolitics, delay often means the underlying issues are still waiting to be addressed. This situation is less about a single failed meeting and more about a long-standing gap that has yet to be resolved. Until that gap is narrowed, short-term agreements will continue to face the same challenges. Subscribe for clear, factual breakdowns on global events, military strategy, and geopolitics.